Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar for Sage 50 P11D covering year end for tax year 2025 to 26. My name's Duncan, I'm your host and presenter, and I am joined today by my colleague Louise, who's standing by in the background ready and waiting to answer any of your questions. Let's now take a look at what we'll cover in today's webinar. So we'll start with an introduction to P11D, explaining how you report expenses and benefits to HMRC, running through some P11D key dates and a quick update on the plans for mandatory payrolling of benefits, which will be phased in from April 2027. We're then going to go through the practical side of things, starting with installing the latest P11D update. So we'll show you how to check that you're on version 31. And how to transfer any existing data from version 30 of Sage 50 P11D. We'll then take a closer look at recording benefit information in P11D. So we'll look at the various benefit records that you can create and also how you can import information from Sage 50 Payroll. And then we'll finish with a demo of the year-end process, running through a little bit of preparation for that, how to produce the P11D forms and complete your employer declaration, and then how to submit your P11D return online directly from your software. And then we'll finish up with some links to further support and a final opportunity for you to ask your questions. So let's get on with our introduction. First of all, explaining what benefits in kind means. So benefits in kind are goods and services provided to employees, either for free or at greatly reduced costs. And these items are often considered part of an employee's taxable income and could include things such as company cars or private medical insurance. If you're an employer who provides taxable expenses or benefits, you must report the value of these BIKs to HMRC. And you are also liable to pay any Class 1A employer's national insurance owed on the relevant benefit types. And I have linked to the gov.uk guidance, which provides a good introduction to expenses and benefits for employers. Now, when it comes to reporting this information to HMRC, there are currently two ways you can do this. So what we'll be focusing on today is the P11D process. Now, this all happens at the end of the tax year, and it's where an employer would submit a form P11D for each employee who was provided with taxable expenses or benefits in the previous tax year. They would also give a copy of that form to the employee. They would complete an employer declaration known as a P11D-B, which will show details of the Class 1A national insurance owed, and that would all be submitted online to HMRC. Now, the tax that's due on the benefits reported on a P11D is paid by the employee via an adjustment to their tax code. So this means in some cases, they will be paying the tax on the benefits they've received in arrears, so in the following tax year to the year that it was reported. Now, the other way of reporting expenses and benefits is via a process known as payrolling. So this is when it's done in real time via your payroll software. Now, if you're payrolling benefits, you process them through payroll as notional payments, meaning that the value of the benefit goes through the payroll in order to deduct the tax that's due, but the employees don't actually receive any amount in their net pay. And it's reported in a full payment submission on or before each pay date. So this means that the tax on the benefits is deducted and paid in real time each month. A P11D is not required for benefits that have been payrolled. However, under the current voluntary arrangements, employers must still submit a P11D-B, that's the employer declaration with the details of the Class 1A national insurance. And that is paid currently as an annual payment after the end of the tax year. Now, it's important to note that to payroll benefits, employers must have registered with HMRC before the start of the tax year that they want to start doing this. And there is a webinar recording, our Introduction to Payrolling Benefits webinar, which you can access from the handout. Now, as many of you will be aware, there are plans in the near future to make payrolling of benefits mandatory. And we've actually had a very recent update from the government on this. So on the 15th of June, HMRC announced that there will now be a phased introduction of the mandatory payrolling of benefits in kind starting in April 2027. Now, previously, all benefit types, with the exception of accommodation and loans, were due to be payrolled from April, but it is now being introduced in phases. So employers will need to report the tax and the Class 1A national insurance on some benefits in kind through payroll software from April 2027. That'll be known as phase 1. And then most other benefit kinds from April 2028 or phase 2. Now from April, payrolling accommodation and loans will be voluntary, so you can register to do that. However, those benefit types will still be able to be reported on a P11D. And then the FPS, including the details of the benefit in kind, will include more granular detail on the type of benefits for the ones that are mandated, closely matching the information that is currently submitted on a P11D. So just to break down which benefit types will be mandatory from April 2027, phase 1 will include company cars and fuel benefit, company vans and fuel, and all medical benefit types. And these are the most common benefits that are provided by employers. So if those are the only benefit types that you provide to your employee, everything is as it was, and it will be mandatory to payroll this information from April 2027. For other benefit types, they will be coming in phase 2. So most remaining benefit types must be payrolled from April 2028. The only exceptions being accommodation and loans, which can still be reported on a P11D, or you can voluntarily payroll those benefits as of next April. And for an update on that announcement, I have linked to the latest guidance from HMRC, and they have said they're going to be publishing further guidance in the coming months. So that's in the future. Back to today and back to P11D. I'd just like to run through some of your key dates and deadlines before we move on to the practical side of managing all of this in Sage 50 P11D. So on this timeline, we've got the key dates, starting with the 5th of April, which is the last day of the tax year. So you will be reporting on taxable expenses and benefits provided up to the 5th of April 2026. On the 9th of April, we released the latest update to Sage 50 P11D. That's version 31, and it contains all the updated legislation for reporting on the tax year that just ended and all the latest P11D forms. So it's really important that you've updated to that latest version for this year's P11D. The next date is your first deadline. So this is coming up soon. The 6th of July is the deadline to submit your P11D and P11DB to HMRC, and also to provide a copy of the P11D to your employees. And then the 22nd of July is the payment deadline for Class 1A national insurance, or 19th of July if you make payments by cheque. So some key dates there to be aware of. Make sure you get that submission done before that deadline. So what we're going to focus on for the rest of the webinar is using the Sage 50 P11D software to manage all of these processes. And we're going to start with ensuring that you've installed the latest update to P11D, which is version 31. Now, if you were using version 30 in the previous tax year, here are some preparation steps for you. So we'll give you a quick demo on these steps, but to ensure a smooth installation and transfer to version 31, first of all, you need to make a note of your serial number and activation key. So you can find these details in the previous version. Second step is to make a note of your data location, as you'll be able to browse that location, and that will then transfer your data into version 31. Your third step is to run compact and repair, which runs some maintenance on your database, ensuring it's in the best possible shape to be upgraded. And the fourth and final step is to ensure you have an up-to-date backup of your P11D data. So this is for existing users that were previously using version 30. So we'll have a quick look at those steps now. So I'm just going to bring those slides down. First thing I'll show you is where you can find your serial number and activation key. So if you log into version 30 and then click on the Help menu at the top of the screen, if you then come down and click About, that will open up a separate screen. And on the General tab of that About screen is where you'll find your serial number and activation key. And you will use those same details to activate version 31 following the installation. So if you need those details, go to Help and About, you'll find them from there. Second thing to know is your data location. So this can be found on the status bar at the bottom of the program. So here in the bottom left corner, you can see my P11D data path. Another way to find this is if you click on the File menu and click onto Change Database Location, you'll actually find your current data path shown here. And one advantage of checking it this way is that you can highlight that path, right click and copy it, and then I'm going to paste that into a notepad file so that I've got a record of it. So that is my existing P11D data path. Third thing to do is to run compact and repair. So really simple this, go onto the File menu in the top left corner and then click Compact and Repair. You'll then see this confirmation message. So you would click OK to the message, and then once it's completed the compact and repair, you'll see this message, and you would go ahead and click OK. And then our final step is to back up the existing data. So you can do this by going to the File menu and then Backup. If you then work through the backup wizard by clicking Next and choosing to back up your data files, you've then got the backup path. So browse to a convenient location. I'm going to choose my backup, and I'm going to call this V30 P11D data. And I then have a backed up version of my existing P11D data. So that is your preparation in version 30. What you would then need to do is to download version 31 and install it. We'll have a look at what that installation looks like in just a moment. But if you need to find the download file, just head to our help center. That's sage.co.uk/P11D support. Or if you're in version 30, you can click this Sage icon just above your employee list. That will open our P11D Help Center. Follow the link for year-end 2026, and then click on Step 1 to download and install version 31. And from here, you'll find the full installation guide, including the link to download the latest software. So once you've downloaded the installer file, you'll be able to run that file to install version 31. So that's just some of the preparation steps. Just to recap those, we made a note of our serial number and activation key and data location. We've ran compact and repair and backed up our data. And then the next steps are to download the installation file from our website. There's a direct link to that article on your handout. Make sure you're logged onto your computer as an administrator. and then run the file that you downloaded in order to install version 31. Now, a quick note about the installation. The update must be installed into a new folder so that it doesn't overwrite any existing version. If you try to install in an existing folder, the installation will not let you. So we just suggest installing into the default location, which is the version 31 folder. And as part of the installation process, you can then choose where you want to keep your P11D data. Once the installation is complete, you'll then have a new shortcut on your desktop for P11D version 31. And then you can go ahead and activate the program. And then if you have any existing data, that can then be transferred. And then you can have a look at updating the benefit records for tax year 2025 to 26. So we're just going to rejoin the demo at this point. So we have now completed our installation. We've got a new shortcut on the desktop for version 31. So if I double click this shortcut, first thing that's going to pop up is the prompt asking for your serial number and activation key. So using the details that you noted earlier, pop your details in and click Next. And then you'll find there are two options to set up your P11D data. You can either create new data from scratch, or you can choose the option to upgrade existing data. So if you're brand new to Sage 50 P11D, you would create new data, and then you can start creating your employer, employee, and benefit records. Or if, like me, you've got some existing data, you can choose the option to upgrade that data, and then you'll be able to browse to the existing data path. So let's choose that option now and click on to Next. It's then asking us to specify the location of any existing data. So we can browse to it, but because I made a note of it in a notepad file, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy it, and then I'm going to paste it into this screen here. So this was my version 30 data path. And because it's found existing data, we can then click Finish, and that will then transfer and take us through the upgrade data wizard. So I'm going to click onto Next. And then once the upgrade is complete, you do have an option of viewing the upgrade log. You can then click Finish. It confirms that the conversion was successful and it now needs to recalculate the figures. If I then click OK, it'll do that recalculation. That's completed successfully, and that will then launch and log me in to Sage 50 P11D version 31. I'm entering my login details. And you can see now that we're logged into version 31, as it says on the toolbar at the top of the screen. We could also see the existing data. So I can see my employer name, P11D demo company, and I can see a list of existing employees. So we've got everything transferred over, and then we're now ready to update the existing information with all of the benefits that were provided in the tax year just ended. So just to finish off the installation section. So after you've installed version 31 and you launch it for the first time, you will be asked to enter your serial number and activation key. So you can make a note of these from version 30, or you can find them by logging into your MySage account on our website. You then have two options. So you can either browse to existing data to have that copied over and converted to version 31, or you can choose the option to create brand new data, which is also an option if you prefer to restore a backup of existing data. So you'd create a new database, and if you do have a backup of existing data, you would use the File and Restore menu. If you are working with existing data, you will be prompted to upgrade it. So follow the prompts on screen to do that. And once the data upgrade is complete, all of your records will be recalculated in the latest version. And once that's completed successfully, you are then logged in to version 31. So what you need to do next is to enter the benefit details for the tax year 2025 to 26. So I'd like to give you a high-level overview of the records that you need to keep in P11D, and then we'll go into some demonstrations showing you some existing information, but we will also cover how to import details from payroll and also how to record new benefit details in the P11D software. So the three levels of records you need to keep in P11D start with the employer details. So this would include the employer name and your PAYE reference. Would need an employee record for each employee who needs a P11D. So that contains their personal details, things like their national insurance number. And then you would create the benefit records for each different type of benefit that was provided to that employee. And you'll see there are a load of different categories of benefits that you can create in the software. So we're just going to show you some examples of some of the more common benefit types, but I just want to remind you that we do have a support hub available at sage.co.uk/P11D support. And from there, you will find details of all of the kind of benefit types and how-to articles for using the software. The other thing I'm going to touch on in the demonstration is importing records from Sage 50 Payroll. So if you also use our payroll software, within there you will have your employer details recorded. You'll have employee records in payroll, and you may also have company car and fuel records if you've used the cars and fuel section of the employee record. So to give you a bit of a head start when setting up from scratch or updating existing details, there is an import option from payroll. So let's have a look at all of that in action now. So we're going to start in P11D. So just to give you a bit of an overview on navigating the software. So we know we've got the three main areas: employer, employee, and benefits. And you'll find corresponding sections on the navigation bar on the left-hand side. So this benefits section is where you can create and maintain benefit records. And you'll see there are various categories listed within this menu. The employee section is to do with managing employee records. So you can view them or create new records from here. And then the employer tasks are all to do with employer records. And we're going to come back to this section when we're ready to complete our employer declaration. So you can use these stacked toolbars on the left-hand side, and you'll also find the same menu options from the menu bar at the top. So employer, employee, and benefits. In terms of the layout, you'll see that you've got the employee list as the main view within P11D. And then we have this outline window where you'll see the details of your employer records. So I've just got the one employer set up in my existing data, and I can double click an employer name or right click and select Open Employer Record if I want to view the details. Same with the employees. If I select an employee in this list, I can double click their name to open the record, or I can right click to do the same, and I can see the employee details. And then with an employee selected, towards the bottom of the screen, you'll find the benefits area. And this is where you'll see any existing benefit records. So I've got a company car record for this particular employee, as well as a medical insurance benefit record. And depending on the benefit type, it will categorize it into the correct P11D section, and it will do any necessary calculations to work out the cash equivalent to go on the P11D form. Now, before we look at that in any more detail, I do want to cover importing records from payroll. So this is a really handy way of creating P11D data from new, or also for bringing in anything like new employees or company car records that you created in payroll since the last time you used the software. So what I actually have is my payroll program already open. So this is the same company but set up in payroll. And since I last used P11D, I've actually taken on a new employee, employee 11. So they started in September of 2025 in the previous tax year. And I've also updated some company car records for some of my employees. And to show you where these are stored, if I go into the employee record and click the cars and fuel tab, you can see for this particular employee, I have entered a date last used for an existing car in June 2025. And looking at this drop-down list, I also added a new car for them that they started using on the 2nd of June 2025. So these are the types of things that might have changed during the year that are already recorded in payroll. So we can save some time by importing this information into P11D. And to do the import, we will need to know the payroll data path. So this is shown on the status bar at the bottom of the screen. So make a note of that full path, and then you'll be able to browse to that in the import wizard in order to import the relevant information. One thing to note though is that you do need to be logged out of payroll in order to do an import. So I'm just going to close it down. And then back in P11D, first of all, make sure you've got an up-to-date backup of your data. So if you need to take one, go to the File menu and choose Backup. And then when you're ready to do an import, still from the File menu, you would choose Data Import. And then in this example, I'm going to import Sage payroll data. So this has taken me into the payroll data import wizard, where I would click onto Next. I can then click Browse and browse to the data path for my payroll data. So clicking on the Browse option, I'm already in C, Program Data, Sage, and then Payroll. This was actually company 1 in my payroll list. And I go into the Pay Data folder and select my payroll.mdb file. And then when I click onto Next, it'll confirm the employer details, so my PAYE reference and employer name. And then it'll show me the employee records that are available to import. Now, you could choose to import all of these records, either by not making a selection or by clicking on Clear and then Swap to highlight everyone. Or you can choose to only import the records that you actually need. So if you need to select employees, if you hold down the Control key on your keyboard, you can then click on the employee names that you want to import. So I know that I've got a new employee and I want to create an employee record for them. And I've got a couple of employees where I've recorded company cars in payroll, and I want to import the latest car records as well. So I've specifically chosen these 3 employees. You could choose to import everybody. I'm going to click onto Next, and then it tells me that an employer with that tax district and reference already exists, which is correct for me. Do I want to update that employer? So I'm going to click Yes to go ahead and do that. We'll see the import progress on screen. And once the payroll data is imported, you get this confirmation screen that it's complete. It'll tick the box to view the import log. And then when we click on to finish, It actually shows me here that I have a couple of employees where the information has been updated, and also an employee will be created in P11D. And then I've got some company cars that have been updated, including a brand new company car record created. So if I click OK, then tells me that these benefit records need to be recalculated. I would click OK again until that has completed successfully. And then it'll prompt me, do I want to import more payroll data? So if I want to choose different employees or a different company, I can click yes and follow the same steps. Now I'm going to click no. That's my data import complete. And if I select that same employer, what you'll now see is that I do have a new record for employee 11. So this has been imported with that particular employee's personal details and start date. And looking at employee 4 as an example, we can see an existing company car record has been updated. So the date no longer available has now been imported, and a new company car record has been created with the details of the car imported from payroll. So I would like to show you some of the more common benefit types in P11D. We'll also show you how to create brand new benefit records from scratch. Starting with some existing records, we already have a company car record open here. So you can see for cars, you record the vehicle details, so make, model, registration number, the date the car was registered, and the date it was available to this employee. And if the date available is during the tax year, it'll also state the number of days it was available within this tax year. So because this one was provided on the 2nd of June, it's been available for 308 days. The benefit tab is where the car details are recorded. So when it comes to company cars, and this includes electric cars on an electric vehicle salary sacrifice scheme, which is also classed as a benefit in kind. You would record details of the fuel or power. So the main options being petrol, diesel, electric, or there's a second diesel option if it's diesel RDE2 standard. So make sure you choose the right one in that case. But the engine size, the CO2 emissions, which is used in the calculation, and then things like the list price, any non-standard accessories, and any employee contributions. So as long as the benefit details are recorded in the software, we can then calculate the cash equivalent for the P11D, and it will place it into the correct section of the P11D as well. So that was an existing company car record. This employee also has a medical insurance record. So a bit simpler, this one. We take a look at it, just a commencement date, cessation date, if they've stopped receiving this benefit during the year. And then for medical insurance, the calculation is based on the annual premium. So £250 in this example. I'll just select one of my other employees. So this employee has a company van. So the record has already been created. So I can double click that record from here. You can see the van details have been recorded. And there is an option if they share the van to enter the appropriate shared use percentage reduction. Now with a company van, you don't need the details to do a calculation as it's all based off of a standard charge. So we can see the P11D cost for this van. We can see that that's going in section G. And then one other employee that I want to show you here has a beneficial loan record. So again, this was transferred from last year's P11D data. You always need to check that the benefit records are up to date. So with loans, it's worth checking the opening balance is correct. And particularly with a loan, you may need to input information such as the closing balance. at the end of the year so that the correct cash equivalent value can be created. So just a flavour of some of the existing benefit types just there. Just going to finish this section by creating some benefit records. So we're going to set these up for our new employee that we imported from payroll. So I start by selecting the employee in the list. Currently, they don't have any benefit types here. So I can go to the benefits stacked toolbar, and then I can choose the category of benefit I need to record. So I'm actually going to record a company car. This one is an electric car that the employee receives through an employer salary sacrifice scheme. So if I click onto company cars, I can then start to enter the benefit details. So let's just pop the make and model in and a registration number. We'd enter the date that that car was registered, and then for this employee, the date that they received the car. So it's actually the 1st of October, so midway through the tax year, which means it's going to calculate the cash equivalent based on the number of days it's been available. On the benefit tab, I would choose the fuel or power. This one being an electric car, I would choose electricity only, and you can see that that then removes the CO2 emissions. There's no CO2 emissions for an electric car. I just need to fill in the remaining details, such as the list price, and then I can record any employee costs or contributions. Now, once the car details are entered, I can save it, and you can see it has calculated the cash equivalent. So this is based on the scale charge for an electric car, multiplied by the list price. And then we can see that appears as a benefit record. And at any point for an individual employee, you can switch to their P11D view. And that will then preview the P11D form that the employee will be receiving once you finalize their details. So it's entered the car details in section F, and it's noted the cash equivalent calculated from those car details. Now, I'm also going to create a medical insurance record for this employee. So I could choose it again from the stacked toolbar on the left-hand side, or alternatively from the benefits menu bar at the top. I can come down and choose medical insurance. Again, the commencement date needs to be recorded, which was the 1st of October for this employee. So it's not for the full tax year, but with insurance, we still need to enter the annual premium. So in this example, £250. This benefit is subject to Class 1A national insurance. If you're ever unsure, HMRC have a really handy A to Z of benefit types, which will tell you which ones are subject to Class 1A. But if I go ahead and save this benefit record, you can see it's worked out the P11D cost based on the annual amount and the days that this benefit has been available. So that's going into the medical section of the P11D, section I, which you can see here if I scroll down in the P11D view. So that's just a flavour of recording your P11D information in the software. Remember, it is possible to import some records from payroll if you also use our payroll software, and it's down to you to ensure you've entered or updated all the benefit information for each employee. So for the remainder of the webinar, we're going to cover the year-end process. So I'll start by giving you an overview of the process. So we've got some preparation steps on here, and then the two main steps are there at the end. So to prepare for year-end, first of all, check that you are using the correct version of P11D, that is version 31. Second step is to check the benefit details that you've entered into the software. So I'll show you some handy reports you can run to help you do that. And then once you've done all of those checks and you're happy the information is up to date and accurate, we strongly recommend you take a backup of your P11D data. You can then go on to produce the P11D forms. So you can do printed versions for your employees, or you can email a P11D to them. You would complete the employer declaration, that's the P11DB, check your Class 1A national insurance contributions. And once you've confirmed all of that, you would go ahead and submit to HMRC. So let's demo that process now, starting with some of the preparation. So first thing we'll do is check that we're on the correct version. So we can check this by looking at the version number at the top of the screen, which is reading version 31.0, and also the tax year in the opposite corner, which should be showing tax year 2025 to 26. So that confirms to me that everything is up to date. Second step was checking the benefit details. And before you check these, we do recommend that you recalculate the employer benefits for each employer. So I'm going to check the details for this employer, P11D Demo Company. So I've started by selecting it. I'm going to go to the employer menu at the top of the screen and update employer calculations. And then just hit the option to recalculate the benefits. That ensures that all of the records are recalculated using the latest legislation in the software. The next part is what might take you some time, that is checking the benefit information. And to help you with this, rather than looking through each employee one by one, you might prefer to run some reports. So if I click onto Clear and Swap to highlight everyone in my employee list, you'll see there's a reports option above the list of employee. So if you know the benefit types that you're providing, you can find employee benefit reports for each type. So for example, I have a number of company car benefits. So I could run the company car benefit report. That will then give me a report for each employee. And then we could ask them to check the details. We could have a check ourselves, ensuring that the information is correct and up to date. And you can get similar reports for any of the other benefit types. You've also got employer reports. So these are particularly useful for checking the Class 1A national insurance on the relevant benefits. And you have management reports also for employers. So these are grouped by the benefit type. So if I wanted a summary of my medical insurance, I could run the medical insurance summary report. It groups it by department, so we can see which employees are included and what the cash equivalent values are. You've also got report selections that you might find useful where it groups similar reports together. So you would look through, use the reports that you would need, checking that everything is entered accurately and correctly. Once you've done all of those checks, that's a great time to take a backup of your latest P11D data. So from the File menu, go into the Backup Wizard. Make sure you've backed up your data files, and then you can choose a location for your backup. Give it a name. Then you've got a point you could restore back to if you ever needed to in the future. So those are the main kind of setup steps. So what you can then move on to is the year-end process itself. So the next step is producing the P11Ds and P11DB. So P11D is the form that you're going to give to your employee, and a version of this will be included in your online submission to HMRC. So the default mode is printing the P11Ds, and you print them directly onto plain paper. Or if you've entered email addresses in your employee records and you're using a compatible version of Outlook, you'll be able to email an attached P11D, which will be automatically password protected with your employee's national insurance number. So we'll take a look at where you produce those reports in the demo. Now the P11DB is your employer declaration, and as part of this, it's your responsibility to check that the Class 1A national insurance contributions stated are correct. And there is an option during this section for you to add any manual adjustments to your Class 1A. And one reason why you might need to do that is if you're an employer who has registered to payroll some of your benefit information, but then other benefits are recorded in P11D, and you need to add on some values for benefits that have been payrolled. And I'll point out where you can make adjustments to the Class 1A as part of the demo. Once you've saved that employer declaration, you are then ready to do your submission. So let's go ahead and take a look at that now in the next part of our demo. So first of all, creating the P11D reports. Again, I've selected the employer and I'm clicking clear and swap to highlight my employees. If I go into the reports menu and stay in the employee reports here on the left-hand side, I can then scroll down to find the P11D 2025 to 26. I've got that selected and I'm going to click preview so I can show you the report on screen. And that will then show me a full set of P11D reports. I think it's ordered by employee surname. And if I start to scroll through, you'll see we've got some car details for this first employee. We've also got the private medical insurance in the appropriate category. And then it goes on to list the details for the next employees. So this one was the company van we recorded earlier. And you'll be able to view these on screen, be able to see the details, and give it one final check from here. To print a copy for your employees, just use the print option in the top left corner, and that will print directly onto plain paper. And if you want to save a PDF copy for your own company records, you can export this full report by clicking the export option, and you'll be able to save it as a PDF. So again, I'm going to drop this on my desktop and save a copy of all the P11Ds, which I can easily refer back to later. So that's the print option, pretty straightforward. Email option, if you've entered email addresses, is found just underneath. So you do need a compatible version of Outlook to use this. You would simply select the email layout and click onto email. And what that then does is it produces the emails, drops them into your drafts folder. So it'll look something like this. And then you'll be able to open the email, which will have the P11D attached. And that can then be sent directly to each employee. So when they come to open it, they will be asked to enter a password, and that password will be their NI number. So they would pop that in, and that will then show them their P11D. So that is the email option. As I say, you'll find that in your drafts folder. Now, one common question that we do get is it possible to upload the P11Ds to Sage HR in the same way as payslips and P60s? Just to let you know, there isn't any direct way of doing that. So there's no integration between P11D and Sage HR. What you could do as a workaround is to individually save P11D reports as PDFs. So select the relevant employee, switch to their P11D view, and then export that one P11D and save the file as a PDF. And then if you do use the core HR module in Sage HR, so if you subscribe to that, we have it included in your package, you could upload that PDF as a document. So it's a pretty manual process. but that is a way of exporting an individual P11D. So that's the copy done for our employees. The next thing to do is to complete our employer declaration. So to do this, you would head to the employer tasks on the stack toolbar on the left-hand side, and you would choose this option for employer's declaration. On the declaration tab, you would tick the box in the middle, confirming that the expenses and benefits are all enclosed with the declaration. You can enter the capacity in which you're signing the declaration. And then on the adjustments tab, this is where you can review total benefits liable at Class 1A, and then the calculated Class 1A national insurance that you need to pay. So if all of your benefit records have been set up in P11D, there should be no need to do any manual adjustments. So it'll show you total benefits, and if you've got the professional version, you'll be able to drill down by benefit type. And then the total cash equivalent of these benefits is shown here in box D, multiplied by 15%, which is the employer's NI percentage, to give you the Class 1A that is payable. Now, if there are any benefits that have not been recorded in P11D, and an example of this is where an employer has chosen, they've registered to payroll some benefit types. So some go through payroll, some go on a P11D. If you do need to add adjustments to your Class 1A figure on the P11DB, that can be done in this section here. So for example, if I had £5,000 cash equivalent of payrolled benefits that I need to include because they were subject to Class 1A, I could enter that £5,000 as a further addition. I could enter a brief description. You can see that that is now included in this total and therefore included in the Class 1A calculation. Now, once you're happy, when you've checked these figures, you can click on to save, which saves the employer declaration. Print your own copy if you want to keep a printed copy. And then when you close out of this screen, that's your declaration done, and you are ready to submit your return. So that is the final step, which we're going to show you right now. So all of this is managed via the Internet submissions tasks. The first option is where you can record your e-submission settings. So this is the user ID and password that you use to log into your PAYE online account. So I've already got my details entered. You can record your details here. When you're ready to submit, choose the option to submit P11D. And if you haven't already done so, you've got an opportunity to take a backup now. So I've already got a backup, so I'm going to click no. You'll then see the employers listed. I just have the one. You just need to make sure that it says yes in the P11DB column and yes, can submit. So you would select that employer, you would click on to continue, and that will then take you into the submission screen. So you won't see this warning. This is just because I'm in a training environment. But you can see we've got our submission screen telling you you're about to submit your P11D to the government gateway. I would click continue, where you can review your gateway registration and company details, and then click submit to see a summary of the information you're about to send. So check you're happy with the number of employees, your Class 1A figure, etc. And then you'd hit the submit option to send that to HMRC. Now, you can only do one complete submission per PAYE reference from your P11D software, and that's why it's so important to do the preparation and check you're happy that everything is entered correctly and accurately. You can see this one has been successful, which means it now appears in my submission log. You can see the details, date and time and submission, correlation ID, and you can see more granular detail of what was included in that submission via the P11D viewer. this option just here. So we'll show you details of the different benefit types, things like cash equivalent values, etc. So that's a good way of drilling down into what was actually included in your submission. So I just need to give the copy of the P11Ds to my employees. I've done my submission and my employer declaration, and that is everything complete. So just recapping those final steps, you can print or email the P11Ds for your employees, and then you'll need to complete your employer declaration. Once you've done that, head to the Internet Submissions options, saving your resubmission settings and making that submission of your P11D and P11DB. Still got the options of viewing the submission log and P11D viewer after the event if needed. Hopefully you won't need this section, but if you do get any errors during the submission, you will see an error code with further details of what the problem was. The most common error that we see is error 1046, which is an authentication failure. And the most common cause of that is an incorrect user ID or password for your government gateway account, or the incorrect tax district and reference. So a couple of places you can check straight away if you get error 1046, but I've also linked to our help guides for that specific error and any other error that you might see. And just to mention corrections, it is only possible to do one P11D submission per PAYE reference from P11D. If you do realise you've made a mistake and need to make a correction, the approach to take would be to correct the records in your P11D software. You can then reproduce the reports for the P11D and the P11DB in your software and use those reports to submit a correction via the PAYE online portal. So you'd log into your HMRC account and you would be able to submit corrected values from there. But again, we've got a guide that gives some detail on doing that. So we are nearly at the end of our allotted time. So I know there's been a lot that we've packed in there, but we have added some links to further support here in your handout. So do make sure you download that before you leave us. Don't forget, we've got our online help centre, sage.co.uk/P11D support, available 24/7. And I've also included some useful gov.uk links from there. If you do need to reach out to our support team, you'll find their contact details on our website. So go to P11D support and look for the get in touch links. We'll try and stick around just a few more minutes just to ensure that we've sent out answers to the questions for you. Don't forget to download the handout if you'd like to take that away with you, and do look out for a recording arriving in your inbox. That should be with you at some point this afternoon. So just to wrap up, we'll leave this open a few minutes, but just to wrap up, I'd like to thank you all for attending today and for joining us at the webinar. I hope you found the session useful. When you leave the webinar, you will be asked to complete a survey. So it would be great to hear any feedback that you might have, as we always use that to improve these sessions moving forward. But thanks once again for your time, and maybe we'll see you on some other webinars in the future. But it is goodbye for now.